So I'd like to now introduce our next speaker. So I mentioned that we had two research reports. First one was the one with CEB that Anthony talked about, and the second one is research that we've recently conducted in Europe amongst IT decision makers around the purchase of large value purchases. So we've done co-funded research with Cara Enterprise to specifically look into that, because we've had often questions from our marketers, our customers, on how does it differ, how does the purchase journey and the decision-making process differ from small business purchases or small purchases to large ones. And really, this is to shed more insight into that from a European basis. Now, I'll introduce you to Edward. Edward Lowe is the Sales, New Business and Marketing Director from Cara Enterprise. So he will be taking us through the research findings.
Yep, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Hannah. So I'm here today to share with you the results of research that we undertook, again, as Hannah said, with Google, where we wanted to better understand the decision-making process for services or products over the value of 100,000 euros. Before I go into that, I'll give you a bit of context of why I'm here. So I am the New Business and Marketing Director, as Hannah said, for Cara Enterprise. Now, we are the B2B arm of Cara, the global communications planning and media buying agency. And we're part of Dentsu Aegis Network, so that's just a bit about me. I am a B2B marketer, so I'm in your shoes, as it were. So to begin with, I'll just get stuck in. As I mentioned, the key objective was to understand better the decision-making process. Now, the way that we defined decision makers were people who had been involved in either the research or the purchase of products or services over the value of 100,000 euros for their company in the last 24 months. The respondents' profile was quite straightforward. So we had 800 people. That's equally split between 4 countries that we were researching, and that was Germany, France, the UK, and Italy. And the organisation size were 500 staff or over. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to get into a little bit of detail here of the demographics of the individuals or of the respondents. So as you can see, the majority of the respondents were between 25 and 44. Italy and Germany have the strongest representations of the younger half of that band, whereas France and the UK, the larger part of that band, 35 to 44. Interesting to point out here is that the UK by far had the largest percentage of respondents in the 45 to 54 category, so decision makers from the UK, typically slightly older. Italy is most likely to have female decision makers, and I'm embarrassed to say that the UK was least likely to have female decision makers within that. So if we have a look at the size of the organisations that our respondents were working for, what we see here is that the UK organisation size is relatively flat. We have a much higher percentage of organisations that have 10,000 staff or more. My assumption in that is that there are probably more headquarters, HQs within the UK. What's also interesting here to note is Germany's Mittelstand is well represented very clearly here with a large network of SMEs. So, the type of products that were researched within this or indeed purchased. What's interesting here is there's a wide range of products that are both researched and purchased. The big winners, IT. That's not that surprising. Hardware at 45%. What's quite interesting actually also is that according to a recent prediction of Forbes, that by 2017, I think chief marketing officers are going to be spending more on IT than CIOs. Now, 80% of the respondents actually researched and purchased the product as well. If you look over on the right-hand side, the products and services that they were looking into purchasing, 86% of them was completely new products. Now, in my view, that's probably because you've got a larger decision-making unit that is involved with buying that size of purchase. There was a spike as well in that the UK respondents were most likely to be making high-value purchases at 19%. Again, I think that probably mirrors the fact that we've got more headquarters in London or the UK than the rest of Europe. So I think this slide represents the hub of the rest of the findings, in so much as the decision-making unit. Now, if you see over this side, bear with me. Over half of the decision-making unit is made up of 2 to 5 people, but 84%, up to 84%, is made up by between 2 and 10 people. What does that mean? It's huge, the decision-making unit is. But that means individually the members of that unit are all looking for different things. And what we can take away from that is that you've also got to cater for the interests and the needs and the habits of consumption of every single one of those members. Also, I'd like to point out that over half of the people in both cases were both researchers and influencers. So, more than 1 in 2 of people that's reading or consuming your content is going to have a final say in the decision at the end of the day. So, unsurprisingly, with that many people who are involved with the decision-making, the timeframes are quite large. In particular here, we're looking at between 1 to 6 months predominantly to make the decisions, and bear in mind that these are high-value decisions that are being made of purchase buys of over 100,000 euros. So what's essential here, I would say, is to map your content, campaign, and communication strategy over at least 6 months, and probably more, bearing in mind that I think it was related to earlier today. There's between 5 and 8 pieces of information that's actually consumed before they actually even come to you, okay? Because they're very well informed. So let's have a look at where these decision makers are getting their information. Unsurprisingly, the internet plays a massive part. We're on a digital juggernaut. What's interesting to me here is that the numbers are very flat. With a large decision-making unit, you're having a lot of different people who are accessing the internet at different times, so you're not seeing any particular peaks here. Trade publications, print, and apps, so we're still digital and traditional, come in a close second here. They're fairly flat and peaking along the general education, and then all the way through to understanding the specific features. Then it drops off a little bit. But bear in mind also that the respondents also were not averse from getting calls from you, and predominantly that's happening around understanding the specific features stage. So they've accumulated and understood the content, they know what the market's doing, they've pretty much identified what they want to do. So what they want to do then is have a conversation with you, talk about the specific features of the service or the product. So as I mentioned before, we are on a digital juggernaut. Internet was at the top of that pile. What I'm going to go into now is a little bit of a deeper dive in the digital aspect and where and what our decision makers are, where are they finding this information? Unsurprisingly, search engines are at the top of that list. Second of all comes in company vendor websites. So people are going into the search engines, looking for the information that they need. They're then evaluating and going to specific websites. The one area that I was quite surprised about but encouraged was that peer-generated online reviews come in a strong third. So what does that mean? If you've not invested in search, PPC, SEO, you're missing a lot of leads that are coming straight in. So this is really quite fundamental as part of your plan. So once they go into search engines, interesting to see what are people looking for. Straight up, vendor websites across the board in each of the geographies is the top of the pile. UK and France, to me, are looking for what I call slightly more kite-marked sources. So we're looking at white papers, publisher websites, product sites, whereas Germany, and again reflected by probably their Mittelstand, and Italy want to hear a little bit more from others and their opinions, especially Italy, who, second of all, come in at peer testimonials, but blogs and forums make top four. So there's been a lot of talk about mobile, certainly this year. Maybe it's the social of last year, but it's something that we're all trying to find out how to get the most value out of. What's interesting for me here on this data actually is the silent data coming out of the right-hand side of this slide. So we're looking at 66% are still experiencing a mobile unfriendly website. Why does this matter? Effectively, because a quarter of all people that are coming onto your website using a mobile device are leaving initially. Now, that's a lot of leads to be losing straight away. Now, of those that stay, 19% stick it out. So what's happening to the other 80% of those individuals that are actually saying they're going elsewhere? And that's a lot of leads to be leaving your site. So really, there aren't any excuses not to have a mobile-friendly site. So I've been through this. So which devices are they using at which stage? I had a look at a couple of versions of this data, trying to find those that rated it of the utmost importance at 0.5. But actually, this represents the use of the applications a little bit better, in so much as it's not surprising that our desktops are being used to research these sorts of research this sort of information. However, everything seems pretty stable across the board here. Desktop is the highest, but we're still looking at a fifth of every part of the decision-making unit are using both tablets and mobile, pretty much all the way through the cycle, with a bit of tailing off at the end, obviously, when they're making the decisions. So that again reinforces that you need to have a sort of application-ready websites for them to undertake your research. We've had a few conversations and a great video a little bit earlier about the digital. Now, almost half of the total respondents have made use of digital at one stage or another. And of those that are using it, we're seeing that professional reviews, so that's the peer review again, is featuring very strongly. Websites visits, there's no surprise there that YouTube's kind of leading the bunch. It is a video website. But we recently undertook some research into video at the end of last year, and what was identified is that the C-suite are using video a lot more than we had anticipated. And the reason for that, we understood, is that it is a concise form of information. The further up the value chain you're going, the more concise the sorts of information that they are consuming. So that is probably reinforcing a few of the points that were made earlier about video. So what does this all mean? We're seeing a much more diverse and larger decision-making unit. We know it's complex. We've got different members of the decision-making unit consuming different formats at different stages and different stages of their buying cycle. And it works in different ways in different business cultures throughout the four that we were researching. So you've got to know how your audiences are consuming their media in their relative business areas or regions, rather. Added to all of this, we've got the two forces of one of convergence and one of globalization. But unlike the B2C world, where globalization and convergence is actually reducing the time from stimulus to purchase, we're seeing it actually increasing in the B2B world. And that's reinforced by the fact that we really need to engage with this audience by having a continuous conversation with them and each individual part of that unit as well. So it can get quite complicated. The good news is that the media landscape, which is effectively the vehicles that are delivering your messages, is navigable. And there's a lot of intelligence and a lot of support out there from agencies that are able to help you with that. Not everybody has got unlimited budgets now, unfortunately, so we've got to be fairly particular and fairly strategic about which parts of that media that we're engaging with and how, what formats. And just to leave with a couple of takeaways, I've flown through this a little bit. But first of all, you've got to know all of your audience. If you don't know who you're trying to get in front of, you're not going to know how to communicate with those individuals. We know that the decision-making unit is large and diverse. Your media and your content needs to cater for the business objectives of the individuals involved within that unit. The decision-making process is a long one. It can be up to six months. As I mentioned before, remember that purchasers are getting to over 70% of their process with their minds almost made up. They're consuming 5 to 8 pieces of literature before they even talk to you. And also your website is your doorway to your business, so make sure that you are platform ready. Mobile is obviously essential. There'll be a lot more information coming out about how we're using mobile, but also make sure that you're featuring formats that are being consumed by the right people in the right way, like video, which we've covered a little bit earlier. So final thought is, I suppose, is the campaign dead? I don't know, in so much as we need to maintain a continuous conversation with each of the individuals of the decision-making unit. Throughout Europe, each of the individual regional markets are very different, and they are consuming media in a different way. And I suppose at the end of the day, don't be afraid to ask. There are people out there that can help. Thank you very much. That was it.